Truistery Vibes warmly welcomes all our beloved listeners. We're so glad to see you again in our familiar time slot.
Today,
Truistery Vibes brings you a brand new story, one that we hope will touch your heart and stay with you. As you listen, feel free to leave a comment sharing the quote or moment that left the deepest impression on you. Wishing you a wonderful and meaningful listening experience. A cold front had slipped down the Colorado River that Friday, surprising even the weather app. It was the kind of November chill that made the neon lights on East 6th look sharper. The kind that nudged Austinites to trade Topo Chico for something that burned a little. Inside the Rusty Barrel, a converted mechanic's garage now famous for IPAs and live blues. The air was all body heat, hops, and guitar twang. At a high top near the stage stood Miles Whitaker, 37, steel-toed boots still dusted from an afternoon site visit, plaid rolled to the elbows. He'd promised himself 2 drinks, maybe 3, then home to kiss Ivy goodnight. But the friend group's group text had erupted with "first rounds on me." And Miles never liked being the first to bail. "Gentlemen," Jonah Pierce announced, thumping 2 pitchers onto the table like trophies. Jonah was Miles's college roommate turned commercial realtor, still capable of climbing a rock wall in loafers. Behind him came Tate Douglas, the junior engineer who idolized Miles enough to mirror his beard trim. Blues slid through the room, bent notes, crooked grin. Miles poured amber into mason jars, foam swaggering over the rim. "To finished bridges and open weekends," he said, lifting his glass. They clinked, suds splashed. The first sip tasted like citrus and job well done. Conversation pinballed. Texas versus Oklahoma. Property taxes. Who'd actually finish the upcoming marathon? A second pitcher vanished, replaced by a third. Warmth crept into Miles's shoulders, loosening his laugh. He felt good, lighter than he had in weeks. Jonah leaned in, phone aloft. "Bro," Elise posted a Halloween throwback. He turned the screen. There was Ivy, 5 years old, freckles dusted by face paint into a tiny red fox. She held a plastic pumpkin bucket almost bigger than she was. Elise stood behind her, half hidden, one hand steadying the bucket, the other waving at the lens, smile easy, eyes unguarded. "Your girls are adorable," Tate said. "Like, that should be on a cereal box." Jonah jabbed a finger at Ivy's face. "Honestly, Whitaker, she's a Rowan clone. I don't see a single Whitaker gene in there."
Tate laughed.
"Come on, Jonah. Kids change every 6 months."
Yeah.
Jonah went on, grin widening as the IPA worked its mischief, but admitted, "Miles, Elise's gene's strong. Strong enough to get you tested." The table erupted in whoops. A few patrons glanced over. Someone near the stage let out a mock, "Oh." Miles forced a chuckle, raising 2 fingers in surrender. Easy, he said, half smiling. "I'm pretty sure she's mine. She refuses to eat the crust on her sandwiches. Guess where that came from?" The laughter rolled on to the next topic, but the joke had already lodged somewhere behind Miles's sternum. "Genetics are weird. My nephew looks exactly like the UPS driver and nothing like my brother." Miles managed to smile. "UPS driver.
Nice."
"Genes are weird," he agreed. Ears ringing louder than the guitar solo, now firing up. Pitcher 4 landed. Conversation splintered. Tate started explaining why Austin should ban gas leaf blowers. Jonah argued that renters shouldn't vote on property tax caps. Miles drifted, half listening, half scrolling through photos on his phone. Ivy at Barton Springs clutching a popsicle. Elise in the background holding a towel. Ivy at the zoo perched on Miles's shoulders, a moment Jonah would say disproved nothing. The guitarist bent a note so blue it could bruise. Miles's buzz sharpened into a prickle. He caught himself wondering when Ivy's eyes had turned that particular hazel. Had they always been so light? Elise's eyes were that color. His were darker. He opened the selfie camera, zoomed in on his own pupils.
Too dark to compare.
Ridiculous, he thought, but the thought wouldn't unstick. Jonah slammed his glass down. "All right, I'm starving. Nachos?" Tate checked his watch. "Kitchen closes in 10. Miles excused himself and walked toward the restroom, weaving through Friday bloomers and tattoo sleeves. Except he wasn't wrong about Tony's kid and the UPS guy. Remember that barbecue? He splashed water on his face, patted it dry with a thin paper towel that tore halfway through. The reflection staring back looked suddenly older, eyebrows pinched. When he returned, the table was louder, messier, salsa pooling beside spilled beer. Jonah had acquired sombreros from somewhere and insisted everyone wear them for a selfie. Miles obliged, grin rigid as cardboard. Phone vibrated. Elise read heart. Still at the barrel? Ivy's asked for her bedtime story twice. All okay? Miles typed, deleted, typed, on my way soon. Then added a fox emoji he wasn't sure she'd read as apology or evasion. Jonah leaned over. Wife check-in. Bedtime reminder, Miles said. I should bounce after this round. Come on, one more, Jonah pled. We hardly see you since you went full dad mode. Miles hesitated. The band launched into a cover of Pride and Joy. A waitress slid shot glasses across their table, courtesy of the drummer. Jonah hooped. Tate raised his phone for another boomerang. Miles downed the tequila. It scorched straight to the belly, but the prickle in his chest remained. Bro, lighten up, Jonah said, noticing the cloud. I was just messing. You know Elise would never, right? Miles forced a laugh. Right. Yet even as he said it, the hallway mirror flashed back. Hazel eyes, joke about the UPS driver. Elise's closed-lipped smile whenever someone remarked Ivy looked just like her mama. Stop. He shook his head, but the seed had cracked. Outside, the cold front had deepened. They spilled onto the sidewalk, breath visible. Jonah bummed an e-cig hit from a stranger. Tate called a rideshare. Miles waved them off, insisting he'd Uber later. He needed air. A block away. He perched on a metal bike rack, city sounds humming. Bass from another bar, distant whoop of a party bike, a train horn moaning toward the river. He pulled up Ivy's Halloween photo again. The fox mask, the bucket, Elise's hand. Zoomed in on Ivy's nose, button small, slightly upturned. Elise's, not his. The thought that should have been absurd suddenly felt plausible, then sharp, then painful. He opened a browser, half-drunk thumb stabbing letters. Paternity test without mother knowing Texas. Autofill offered results before he finished. A gust cut through his flannel. Miles shivered, not from the wind. Far behind him, neon letters flickered Rusty Barrel B. One tube shorting out, so the sign read, Rusty Errol. It felt like an omen. He pocketed the phone and ordered an Uber. The driver's ETA was 8 minutes, long enough for doubts to root deeper. And with each passing minute, the sound of Jonah's offhand joke hammered harder, reshaping itself into a question that would follow Miles all the way home. What if Ivy really isn't mine? Miles's Uber dropped him in the driveway at 12:37 a.m. The cold air felt sharper out here in Hyde Park, a North Austin neighborhood where the century-old bungalows looked Pinterest perfect by day and ghost still by night. Porch lights were off. Elise must have gone to bed after Ivy's second request. Any decent husband would slip inside, kiss a sleeping child's forehead, and apologize to his wife for losing track of time. But the IPA and tequila were still playing bumper cars in his bloodstream, and so was Jonah's joke. As Miles fumbled with his smart lock, the porch camera chimed. Elise's phone would buzz upstairs.
Great.
He punched in the code wrong, cursed. Then finally heard the latch whir. Inside, the house smelled like lavender dish soap and faintly of tempera paint. Elise had hosted a parent craft night earlier. A lone table lamp cast a cone of honey-colored light over Ivy's sketchbook, crayon foxes galloping across the page. Across the room, a baby monitor glowed green, broadcasting hushed white noise from Ivy's bedroom. Elise appeared at the hallway threshold in plaid pajama pants and an oversized university sweatshirt. Her hair was pulled into a loose topknot. Freckles dotted her cheeks like punctuation marks. She wasn't frowning. Elise rarely opened with anger, but the disappointment in her eyes might as well have been a siren. You said 10:30. I know. Pictures kept showing up. Miles hung his coat, missing the hook twice. Band was good. Lost track. Elise eyed his sway. Ivy waited up past 9 hoping for her story. You okay?
Fine.
He slurred it just enough that it sounded like fawn. Jonah sends his love. All good. She stepped closer, quiet voice, teacher tone. You smell like a distillery. Come drink some water. Miles followed her into the kitchen. White subway tile, mint cabinets, the renovation they'd half DIY'd before Ivy was born. Elise filled a tumbler at the fridge. He took it, gulped, set it down harder than intended. Jonah made a crack tonight. He tried for casual. It came out sharp. Said Ivy looks nothing like me. Elise blinked, surprised. That again? People always compare kids to whoever they want.
You know that.
He kept going. UPS driver kind of joke. Her brows knit. Jonah's humor can be tone-deaf. But you and I know the truth, so who cares? Miles studied her. Not the forgiving smile he'd hoped for, more a practiced calm. Calm could feel like condescension. Easy for you to shrug off, he muttered. She does look exactly like you. People comment all the time. Because she's 5, Miles.
Kids shift.
2 years ago, she was your clone. Elise opened a cabinet for chamomile tea. Do you really doubt she's yours? The question should have jolted him awake, an alarm bell to stop. But the liquor steered. I don't doubt, he said, voice climbing. I just wonder why no one sees me in her anymore. Does that not bug you? Elise set the mug down slowly. What bugs me is you coming home drunk and picking a fight based on a bar joke. It wasn't just a joke. Jonah's seen things he notices. Jonah once invested in Dogecoin because a Reddit thread told him to. She snapped, then exhaled. I'm too tired for this. She turned to leave the kitchen. Miles's hand shot out, catching her wrist, not violent, but firm enough to startle. Crackling tension filled the tile room. Do you think I'm stupid? He asked, eyes glassy. If something happened back then, before the wedding, tell me now. Elise's face flushed. Let go, Miles.
You're hurting me.
He released, but not the anger. Answer me. I have answered you 12 times in 5 years, she whispered, rubbing her wrist. I loved you then, I love you now, and Ivy is your daughter. Period. A door creaked down the hall. Tiny feet padded across hardwood. Ivy appeared, clutching a stuffed fox in one hand, the collar of her pajama top in the other. Hair a sleep-tossed halo. Mommy? Daddy? Her voice sounded cottony with dreams. Elise hurried over, kneeling. Hey, wildflower, big night owl. Let's get you back to bed. Ivy's gaze slid to Miles. Daddy. You smell like the doctor's hand sanitizer. Elise almost laughed but caught herself. It wasn't funny. Miles forced a smile. Daddy had grown up ginger ale. Read me the Fox book? Ivy yawned. Elise scooped her up. Daddy needs a shower first. I'll read tonight. She carried Ivy down the hall, leaving Miles alone with the humming fridge and his echoing dread. The next sunrise bled rose gold through half-drawn blinds. Miles woke on the couch, mouth desert dry, memory hazy but sore in places. Kitchen noises drifted, mugs clinking, a kettle clicking off. He sat up, joints protesting, and shuffled in. Elise, already dressed for school in a denim jacket, stood by the island buttering toast for Ivy's lunchbox. Ivy colored at the breakfast nook, humming. On the floor lay Miles's work boots. Someone, Elise, had placed a trash can beside the couch in case. Morning, he croaked. Elise glanced over. Coffee's ready. Polite. Neutral. He poured a mug. Silence stretching like saltwater taffy. About last night. I remember, she said, still facing the lunchbox. Do you? Heat rose under his collar. I remember enough. I'm sorry if I. It isn't about if. You grabbed my wrist. She turned, sleeve pushed up revealing faint red marks. I filed this under warning sign. I won't file it again. Guilt stabbed through the hangover fog. Ivy ran over brandishing a drawing. 3 stick figures. Mom, Dad, Ivy, under a rainbow. For your desk, Daddy. Miles's throat pinched. It's perfect.
Svet bear.
He crouched, hugged her, smelling kid shampoo and washable markers, a scent that threatened tears. Elise watched, eyes softening yet still guarded. "We're leaving. Avoid traffic." She kissed Ivy's crown, grabbed her tote. "We'll see you tonight. Early." The subtext hung heavy. Be home. Be sober. Miles spent the workday oscillating between spreadsheets and paranoia, replaying Jonah's remark on loop. He Googled affordable paternity test discreet, then closed the tab, disgusted with himself, then opened it again. By 5 p.m., he hadn't decided anything, except that he needed clarity, somehow. At 6, tires crunched the driveway gravel. A different car. Miles peeked out, his mother's white Buick. Lorraine Whitaker emerged, hair salon set, stepping over landscaping lights like they were puddles. Beside her, Darcy, sister-in-law, clutching a duffel and emotional baggage in equal measure. Front door swung open before Miles could hide. Lorraine's smile was thin as dental floss. "Surprise.
Thought I'd drop dinner."
And Darcy needs a few nights till she finds a new apartment. Miles forced hospitality, ushering them in. The rotisserie chicken's aroma trailed behind. Elise and Ivy wouldn't be back for 30 minutes. Maybe he could stall. "You look pale," Lorraine noted, heading for the kitchen uninvited. "Too many late nights." "Work's been heavy," Miles said. Darcy plopped on the sofa, scrolling TikTok. "Mom said your couch is comfy." She kicked off designer sneakers. Already at home. Lorraine began opening cabinets. "Where's Elise? Montessori must keep her." The tone suggested Elise's job was a hobby, not a career. Miles poured water, hands shaking. "They'll be here soon. Please don't." Doorbell. Too late. Elise stepped in with Ivy, halting at the unexpected tableau. "Oh," Lorraine sang. "Look who finally made it. We brought dinner. Hope that's okay." Elise masked surprise with practiced grace. "Of course.
Darcy."
Darcy waved, without looking up, earbuds in. Ivy tugged Elise's sleeve. "Why's Aunt Darcy moving her stuff?" "Just visiting," Elise whispered. They ate around the reclaimed wood table Miles had built before marriage, Lorraine at the head, carving chicken like a judge with a gavel. Conversation started polite, veered. Lorraine eyed Ivy. "Sugar, you get taller each minute. One day, maybe a baby brother?" She glanced pointedly at Elise's midsection. Elise swallowed mashed potatoes. "We're happy with one for now." Lorraine clicked her tongue. "Whitaker line needs a namesake, Miles. You know that." Stew of shame and irritation simmered in Miles's stomach. He tried redirecting, but Lorraine pressed, stories of families who kept trying till the boy showed. Elise's knuckles whitened around her fork. Ivy, unaware, asked if foxes could have rainbows for tails. Darcy filmed Ivy on her phone. Cute content. Without asking, Elise gently lowered the camera. Darcy rolled her eyes. Dinner ended with dishes piled high and tension higher. Elise ushered Ivy to bath, brushing past Miles in the hallway. He touched her arm. "I didn't know they were coming." She nodded, weary. "Problem isn't the visit. It's boundaries that keep erasing." "I'll talk to Mom," he promised, though his voice lacked conviction, and they both heard it. Lorraine inflated an air mattress in the guest room but complained the linens smelled of vinegar, Elise's eco-detergent. Darcy commandeered the TV for reality show reruns. Miles retreated to the porch with a non-alcoholic beer, trying to be responsible, yet the itch for something stronger gnawed. He opened the search tab again. Paternity test without mother populated instantly from last night. His thumb hovered, then tapped. As the house quieted, Elise lay beside Ivy, listening to the girl's steady breathing and the distant drone of Lorraine on speakerphone with a cousin. Something about Elise just doesn't prioritize family expansion. A silent tear slid from Elise's eye onto the pillow. She kissed Ivy's forehead, whispered a promise neither of them knew how to keep. "Things will stay gentle, no matter what storms blow." Down the hall, Miles stared at the ceiling, phone glowing. A pop-up offered, results in 3 to 5 days. 99.9% accurate. discreet packaging. His finger trembled above Add to Cart.
He pressed X instead,
tossing the phone aside, but doubt, once seated, kept crackling like a live wire in a dry attic, waiting for the next spark to set everything ablaze. The paternity kit arrived 2 days later, stuffed into a plain gray envelope that read, Marlin Labs, Private. Miles slid it from the mailbox like contraband, shoved it beneath his flannel, and hurried inside before anyone could see. Lorraine was in the kitchen critiquing Elise's quinoa salad, bird food, while Darcy vampire napped on the couch, hoodie over her eyes. Miles darted to the master bedroom, locked the door, and tore the box open. Inside, 2 cotton swabs, one labeled alleged father, the other child. Instructions insisted samples be taken first thing in the morning, no food or drink. Ivy never questioned a Q-tip in her cheek when the pediatrician did it. Surely she wouldn't at dawn. He hid the kit in his sock drawer.
The drawer squeaked.
Behind him, Elise's reflection materialized in the dresser mirror, silent as snowfall.
What's that? She asked. No exhaustion.
Just exhaustion.
Miles closed the drawer too fast.
Work papers. Elise's eyes flicked to the drawer handle, then back to him. I'm taking Ivy to the park. She needs daylight. Translation. She needs distance from this house. Miles nodded, throat tight, watching her leave, but too paralyzed to call her back. Saturday slipped into Sunday, and the guest room still housed Lorraine's suitcases. Darcy's TikTok ring light now claimed a corner of the living room. Stress buzzed in the drywall. After Ivy fell asleep, Lorraine poured Miles a nightcap of bourbon, her version of bonding. Elise offered chamomile instead. Miles drank both, an uneasy cocktail of guilt and numb. By 11 p.m., the house was quiet but for Darcy's earbuds leaking reality show dialogue. Elise lay in bed, reading The Montessori Toddler for the 15th time. Miles paced the hallway counting door squeaks between guest room and Ivy's room, mapping the safest path. 1 a.m. Lorraine's snores confirmed the elder Whitaker was out. Darcy's light finally snapped dark. Miles pushed open Ivy's door. Rainbow nightlight halos danced across Fox decals on the wall. Ivy slept starfish style, mouth open, dream-talking to invisible friends. He crept forward, swab hidden in fist. One quick swirl inside her cheek, seal the tube, mail it, truth delivered in 5 business days. Easy. Except his hand shook. The Q-tip brushed Ivy's lips. She stirred, frowning. A floorboard popped behind him. Elise, hair down, eyes stark awake, stood at the threshold clutching Ivy's favorite quilt like armor. Miles, what are you doing? Whisper, razor thin. Shoo, he hissed, panic flaring. She'll wake. Elise stepped in, voice shaking but firm. Is that a DNA kit? Miles's mouth opened, closed. Guilt flew arrest under the soft nightlight. Ivy stirred again, eyelids fluttering. Elise's stare moved from his hand to their daughter, then back. Outside, a freight train wailed, as if announcing catastrophe. Elise's whisper cracked. You promised me trust was sacred. You're swabbing her like she's evidence. Because I need certainty. The words spilled louder than intended. Every time someone says she's your twin, I feel like a what? A father? A fool. The syllable slapped harder than any palm. Ivy woke, confused, tiny voice trembling. Mommy? Elise rushed, scooped her up, retreating from Miles as though he were an open flame. Daddy was just checking on you. She soothed Ivy, but her glare told a different story. Go back to sleep, Wildflower. She carried Ivy to their bed and lay beside her, stroking hair until breathing slowed again. Miles hovered at the doorway, heart hammering. Lorraine emerged behind him, robe cinched tight. What's going on? Elise spoke without turning. Your son tried to collect DNA while Ivy slept. Lorraine gasped, half scandal, half vindication. Well, if he has doubts, better to know. Science is science. Elise stood, lips trembled but words clear. Get out of my room. Lorraine stiffened. This is my family's house. No, Elise said. It's on her mortgage. But tonight it's a danger zone. She faced Miles. You crossed a line we can't redraw. Miles's voice cracked. I'm sorry. I panicked. Panic is forgetting a birthday, Miles. Panic isn't swabbing your preschooler like a crime scene. Darcy's door opened, phone already recording in her hand, content radar on high. Elise's fury darted toward the lens. Turn that off, Darcy. For once, Darcy obeyed. Ivy whimpered, sensing storms behind voices. Elise grabbed a duffel, stuffed in pajamas, toothbrushes, Ivy's sketchbook, a fox plush. Lorraine sputtered about, overreacting. But Elise moved with hurricane calm. Miles reached for her arm. She flinched back. Don't, she said, so quiet it shook him more than screaming. Garrett Rowan's voice echoed in his mind. First warning filed. There won't be a second. At 3:57 a.m. Elise zipped the duffel. She handed Miles the Q-tip. It looked pathetic now, cotton bent. If you want truth, look in a mirror tomorrow morning. Ask who you're becoming. She lifted Ivy, still drowsy, fox clutched to chest. Lorraine barked something about talk like adults, but Elise was already in motion. Miles followed to the driveway, air crisp enough to bite. The RAV4's engine clicked awake. Elise, please. We can fix this, Miles pleaded, voice shredded. She buckled Ivy into the booster seat, kissed her temple. Then she faced Miles across the hood. Porch light painted silver stress lines on her face. You know what fixes fear? Boundaries. Trust. Tonight you broke both. I'll throw the kid away. You can't undo the thought that bought it. Headlights sliced the dark as she backed out. Miles raised a hand, but the SUV slid down the street. Red taillights shrinking until only silence and porch light moths remained. 35 at 4:22 a.m. was an empty ribbon. Miles wasn't behind the wheel. Elise was, eyes gritty, hands 10 and 2. Ivy slept again, cheeks stuck to plush fur. 3 exit signs later, Austin's dome of city light surrendered to hill country darkness. At 5:07, Elise pulled off the highway into San Marcos, turning onto a sleepy street lined with live oaks. The Rowan bungalow sat humble but welcoming, porch swaying in the pre-dawn breeze. A single lamp glowed in the living room window. Garrett Rowan never slept sound once his firefighter days trained him otherwise. He opened the door before Elise knocked. Gray stubble. Flannel over old band tee. His daughter's red-rimmed eyes told enough. He gathered Ivy into his arms, then wrapped Elise in a second hug. No words required. Inside, a kettle whistled. Marlene Rowan, Elise's mom, poured chamomile, real chamomile this time. Ivy was settled onto the pull-out sofa, fox plush tucked under her chin. Sunrise crawled slow across the laminate floor. Elise's voice finally cracked the quiet. I might need to transfer schools. Is that okay? Marlene squeezed her hand. Home is elastic. It stretches when you need room to breathe. Garrett nodded. Jaw hard. We'll fetch the rest when you're ready. You just rest. But Elise couldn't rest yet. She stepped onto the porch, phone in hand, and sent one text to Miles. We're safe. Don't come today. Ivy will FaceTime once she's settled. 3 disappeared, no reply came. The eastern sky blushed peach. Elise exhaled a lungful of fear and watched it drift like fog into the chilly dawn, praying it wouldn't find its way back. Back in Hyde Park, Lorraine railed at her son. Let them cool off. They'll come crawling back. Miles stared at the swab in his palm, cotton wilted, and knew no one was crawling anywhere. Upstairs, Ivy's rainbow drawing lay on his desk. 3 stick figures under a sky of 7 colors. One of those figures had his name scribbled in purple crayon. And that simple truth, written by a child too young to spell DNA, suddenly weighed more than any lab result ever could. Monday morning broke in shades of stale beer and self-loathing. The Hyde Park bungalow felt cavernous without Ivy's dawn chatter or Elise's kettle whistle. Miles's alarm barked at 6 a.m., but he didn't rise until 8, half-dressed, hair matted like sodden hay. Downstairs, Lorraine set out black coffee and judgment in equal portions. "I made your lunch," she said, sliding a plastic container across the island. Turkey on white. Elise would have used whole grain, and a sticky note etched in Lorraine's church bake sale cursive. "You deserve better." Miles ignored the note, grabbed only the coffee. Darcy shuffled in, yawning, opening the fridge as if raid rights came with blood relation. "Any oat milk?" she asked. When no answer came, she poured the rest of Miles's cream into her cereal bowl and retreated to the couch where she'd staked territory with blankets, ring light, and half a dozen Fashion Nova packages. Miles swallowed irritation and caffeine, dreading work. He donned the Bridgeside hard hat, but its weight felt ceremonial, another helmet he apparently didn't deserve. Lorraine called after him. "Remember, strong men don't beg. She'll come around when she sees what life without you costs." He wished those words comforted him, but as he eased the Tacoma out of the driveway, guilt clung like static. At the first stoplight, he scrolled Elise's text again. "We're safe. Don't come today." No promises about tomorrow. Days blurred into a rinse-repeat of spreadsheets he couldn't focus on. In the field, he triple-checked load-bearing models, but numbers danced. He'd reach for coffee and find a phantom Q-tip in his hand, memory replaying Ivy's startled eyes. He FaceTimed Ivy every night at 7. Garrett propped the phone against a salt shaker while Ivy narrated her day. Montessori sandbox, a painted pebble she'd named Tangerine. Elise hovered just outside the frame, only her elbow visible. Miles read a picture book through the screen, voice cracking when Ivy giggled. At the call's end, she pressed tiny fingers to the lens. Miles returned the gesture, a glass wall of fatherhood. Lorraine timing these calls like a critic. FaceTime isn't real parenting. Her next sentence always curled back to grandchildren, to Elise's imbalance, to the urgent need for a son. That word struck Miles like a mosquito, annoying, but too trivial to swat compared to his larger regret. 10 days after Elise left, Jonah texted, "Dude, open bar at the South by Tech Mixer. You need it." Miles typed maybe another time, but autocorrect turned maybe into "I'll be there." Jonah sent a triple fire emoji reply. The Fairmont Austin ballroom pulsed with synth pop and elevator pitches. Name badges flashed like confetti. Venture capitalists, big logo marketers, crypto evangelists who dyed their hair, unicorn gradient for branding. Jonah greeted Miles with a bear hug and a whiskey sour. "Glad you crawled out of the dad cave." Miles forced a smile and followed him through islands of charcuterie and augmented reality demos. By the third drink, the badge blur felt welcome. He tried to steer every conversation toward cantilever beams, safe ground, and away from family. That fortress crumbled when Kendra Vega glided up. Badge reading Kendra Social Firefly Media, DIR, of brand Spark. She wore a cobalt jumpsuit with sleeves that masqueraded as a cape, high-top sneakers, and a smile engineered for thumbnails. Jonah greeted her like an influencer greeting ring light. "Kendra."
"You met Miles."
Genius behind the Brazza Skybridge. Her handshake lingered. "The cantilever guy. Love your TEDx." Miles squinted. "I've never done a TEDx." She winked. "Then I must have dream-scrolled it. Same difference." They laughed. Miles too loudly. Kendra smelled like grapefruit bitters and ambition. She said storytelling 3 times in 2 sentences and used ROI as a verb. "We can ROI that in a weekend." Yet Miles felt seen, not sold. She asked which bridge moment made him proudest. And he surprised himself by describing Ivy's first walk across a finished pedestrian span, tiny sneakers, huge grin, the security harness too big for her toddler belly. Kendra listened without fidgeting at her phone. When Jonah drifted off to chase a VR demo, Kendra filled the vacuum with questions about foundation loads, rising sea level adjustments, whether engineering metaphors could power motivational TikToks. Miles's shoulders loosened. Conversation felt like early courtship, before diapers, property taxes, and family planning. At 11 p.m., they were last at the Nacho Bar, laughing over the absurdity of sponsorship guac. She dipped a chip, asked if he liked live music, Suggested Hotel Vegas still poured decent old fashions after midnight. Miles hesitated. Phone buzzed. Elise. Ivy's asleep early. Talk tomorrow. A photo attached. Ivy hugging the fox plush beneath Garrett's flannel blanket. Miles's chest pinched. Big night.
Kendra asked. My daughter, he said.
Base truth felt safe to admit. Kendra nodded. Mine's too. Long distance co-parenting. She didn't elaborate and he didn't press. Empathy soldered between them. Parental fatigue wrapped in neon mixer lights. They shared a rideshare east. At Hotel Vegas. Guitars shrieked surf punk. The crowd thrashed. Kendra screamed lyrics into Miles's ear. He shouted back arithmetic puns. Tequila sodas multiplied. When the set ended, their laughter spilled outside among smokers. She snapped a selfie. Him. Beard sweaty, eyes bright, her tongue out, fingers in peace sign. Flash blinded the hangover still brewing. Caption, she asked. Bridge nerd goes punk, he suggested. She typed while walking. Hashtag Whitaker Nights it is. She tagged him, posted. He raised an eyebrow. That's fine. A warm novelty slid through him. Being tagged in something other than family photos. He liked the post, heart quickening. At 2:13 a.m. they kissed behind a taco truck while sirens Dopplered past. The next morning, Miles's phone vibrated like a woodpecker. Notifications stacked at Kendra. Vega mentioned you. The selfie had gained 6,000 likes overnight. Kendra's IG reach apparently wider than the Brazos River. Comments flooded with fire emojis and ship gifs. One said, opposite energy power couple. He should have untagged himself, but dopamine beat wisdom. He wrote, great night, great tacos. Within minutes, strangers shipped them harder. He cooks and builds bridges?
Keep him.
Lorraine breezed in, saw the grin. Finally, you look alive. Good news. Miles thumbed the screen dark. Networking paid off. Might sway a new contract. She patted his shoulder like he was 8 and had drawn a decent turkey hand. Excellent. Keep climbing. Darcy, meanwhile, scrolled TikTok on the love seat. She spotted the tagged photo instantly. Her algorithm targeted local trending. Oh, big bro gets influencer boo, she sang. Lorraine demanded to see. Darcy showed. Lorraine's smile sagged. That woman looks vibrant. Translation. Not Elise. Darcy snorted. Miles felt the first twist of guilt. But his phone pinged again at Kendra. Vega added to her story. A boomerang of their tequila clinks. Caption. Punching Mondays in the face with that Miles Buick. He watched the loop until it hypnotized the nagging doubt. Tuesday he skipped lunch and met Kendra at Cafe Paradiso, where she MacBooked a brand deck while reciting bullet points on disruption energy. Miles nodded, though half the jargon blurred. She laughed at his dad jokes. He admired her hustle. Elise once hustled, before Ivy, before Montessori lesson plans swarmed evenings. By Wednesday, a local tech blogger ran a mini feature on the mixer. Photo of Kendra and Miles headlined Brand Builder meets Bridge Builder. Collab in the works. It racked shares among people who liked to guess who was dating whom in Austin Startup Pond. In San Marcos, Elise's phone buzzed during snack time cleanup. Her colleague, Clara, texted, this came across my feed. Thought you should see. Link attached. Elise clicked. Throat cinching as the selfie loaded. Miles with another woman, both looking 21 and trouble-free. Underneath, strangers speculated about their chemistry and co-parenting potential. Elise's face flushed hot, then cold. Garrett walked in to ask about printer ink and found his daughter staring at her screen, eyes glassy. He offered a tissue. She forced a smile for 5-year-old Ivy busy at the craft table, then retreated to the staff bathroom. Inside, Elise let the tears fall, half sorrow, half angry relief. Maybe now I stop hoping. She thought, grief clashing swords with certainty. That night, Lorraine cornered Miles after dinner. This Kendra seems ambitious. And young enough to give us a grandson. Miles recoiled.
Mom.
Please. I'm only saying what's obvious. Elise left. You can't cling to someone who's walked. She walked because we failed her. Lorraine waved the air. She overreacted. But God provides alternatives. A Whitaker boy. Miles set his dishes in the sink louder than necessary. Stop making children a scoreboard. Darcy piped from the couch, not removing headphones. Scoreboard's tied at 0 anyway. Miles shot her a glare. Kendra didn't seem to crave scoreboard points. She craved momentum. Thursday, she invited Miles to a sunrise hit class, ropes, kettlebells, sweat puddles. He nearly puked on the turf. She Instagram-lived the final plank. Followers cheered. She captioned, "Bridge stability starts with core stability." Post-workout, they shared green juice. Her phone buzzed nonstop. Brand collaborations, photo shoots, charity gala invites where good lighting solves half your reputation. Miles found the pace exhilarating, if dizzying. By Friday, she offered comp passes to a river float retreat sponsored by an energy drink startup. He said he had Ivy FaceTime at 7. She suggested he come after. The shuttle leaves at 9. He nodded, ignoring the pang that he'd be 2 hours south of San Marcos, yet not visiting his daughter. On FaceTime, Ivy showed him Tangerine the Pebble wearing googly eyes. Elise remained out of view. "Are you coming this weekend, Daddy?" Ivy asked. "I have work stuff, sweet pea." The lie tasted like chlorine. Ivy's smile wilted. "Okay. I'll tell Tangerine stories myself." After the call, shame pressed so hard he considered texting Elise an apology. But Kendra Snapchatted, "Van leaves in 3. Group selfie included local DJs. A kombucha CEO, 2 micro-influencers with pastel hair. They all chanted Miles. He stuffed shame into a mental glove box and sprinted. The Guadalupe River at midnight glimmered under LED lanterns as drones filmed inflatable sofas carrying half-drunk entrepreneurs downstream. Miles bobbed in a neon tube beside Kendra, who toasted to algorithmic serendipity. He laughed, though water sweated cold along his spine. An hour in, Kendra's phone died. "Need a charge," she pouted. So he paddled them to shore where battery packs awaited in branded tents. Inside, they found privacy enough to kiss until Dawn's first bird call. Someone must have borrowed another phone, though. By breakfast, an image surfaced on Twitter. Kendra and Miles silhouetted by lantern light, lips merged. Hashtag Riverglow. The post hit 10,000 likes before they reached Austin city limits. Miles's stomach flipped, not with excitement now, but foreboding. Elise would surely see. He opened their old message thread, thumb hovering. Nothing he could type would sanitize that image. Mid-afternoon, Jonah barged into Miles's cubicle holding a tablet. "Dude, trending." He swiped to a gossip blog headline, "Local engineer trades hard hats for hard partying." Photos stitched into a slideshow, Kendra kiss, tequila night, kettlebell plank. Jonah's grin faltered seeing Miles's face. "You okay?" Miles rubbed temples. "I think I lit my life on fire." Jonah closed the tablet. "I was joking about Ivy not looking like you. You know that, right?" Miles's laugh was shards of glass. Jokes land differently now. His phone buzzed with an unknown number, area code San Marcos. He answered with diluted hope. Garrett's voice came across gravelly, tired. "Miles." He braced. "Yes, sir." "Whatever you're doing online, it's hurting my kid. Stop." Miles swallowed. "I never." Doesn't matter intent. Intent's invisible. Impacts what she's crying over. Silence expanded. Then Garrett sighed. "You want to see Ivy Sunday? 10 a.m. Park by the duck pond. Show up sober, alone, and early, or don't show at all." Miles whispered, "I'll be there." Garrett hung up. That evening, Lorraine planned a small dinner celebration for Darcy's brand new 10,000 TikTok followers. Miles sat through it sober, nursing iced tea while Darcy filmed everything. Kendra texted flame emojis, asked if he'd RSVP to a rooftop showcase Saturday. He typed, "Have family plans. Rain check." Lorraine caught him smiling at the phone. "Kendra?" Miles pocketed it. "It can wait." She tooted. "You need companions who understand vision." Elise never understood ambition. Miles finally snapped. Mom, stop tearing down Elise to build someone else up. Darcy's eyebrows shot up. Her phone kept recording. Lorraine flushed, lips thin. He left the table, grabbed keys, and drove. No destination. Just spinning city blocks until South Congress lights blurred. Outside Joe's Coffee, he parked head-on steering wheel. He scrolled Kendra's feed one more time. Endless curated energy. Every frame optimized. Elise's last Instagram post showed Ivy painting rocks, 0 filters, 112 likes. He stared until tears muddled the thumbnails. Miles clicked hide my like count, closed the app, and for the first time that week felt the buzz of his phone go silent. Tomorrow he'd buy duck feed, be early, and bring the rainbow drawing rolled in a tube. He wasn't sure what to say to Elise. But he knew what to say to Ivy. Daddy's here. Daddy's growing. Whether growth would be quick enough, or seen as genuine, remained to be judged at Sunday's Pond. For now, under the glow of a neon, "I love you so much" mural, Miles whispered the words to the night, unsure whom they addressed, his absent daughter, his fractured marriage, or the man he hoped still lived beneath the headlines and hashtags. Sunday morning found Miles pacing the edge of Rio Vista Park long before anyone else arrived, sunflower seeds bulging in one pocket and Ivy's rainbow drawing rolled tight in his fist. The river glimmered a cold silver under the early sun. Cedar pollen floated like ghost confetti in the light. When the Rowan's sedan finally pulled in, he felt his heartbeat trip, steady, then sprint again. Ivy burst from the back seat first, her fox plush waving overhead like a victory flag, and he dropped into a crouch as she barreled into his arms. The warmth of her small body, the vanilla scent of her shampoo, the effortless way she trusted the hug, everything inside him shuddered with gratitude and shame. Elise offered a guarded but courteous hello. Garrett Rowan a silent nod that said you get one chance, use it. They fed ducks along the bank, Ivy assigning names, Captain Quack, Lady Waterlily, Major Splash, to each feathered shape that drifted near their shoes. Miles unraveled the drawing, smoothing creases until the 3 stick figures and their Technicolor skies spread flat across his lap. Ivy squealed and asked if she could tape it over her new bed. Elise allowed a faint smile, the first he had earned in weeks. For a few precious minutes talk was easy. Montessori stories, Ivy's obsession with a pebble she'd named Tangerine, Garrett's plan to build a raised garden box that Ivy could tend. When Garrett led Ivy to the playground at the far end of the park, the temperature between Miles and Elise dipped 10 degrees. They settled on a narrow bench beneath a sycamore, brittle leaves rattling overhead. Miles produced an envelope, proof of counseling intake, AA signatures, a doctor's slip clearing him for the company's wellness program. Elise thumbed through without comment. He told her he was 3 weeks sober, that he had a sponsor named Lyle who texted sunrise affirmations whether Miles replied or not. She said consistency mattered more than paperwork. He said he knew. The conversation might have thawed further if his phone hadn't vibrated over and over in his coat, each ping a tiny hammer tapping at the tentative bridge they were building. He ignored it until Ivy's laughter drifted across the playground, then excused himself to check the screen. The notifications were an avalanche. Jonah, co-workers, strangers, even Darcy. At the center was Kendra's Instagram story, bathroom mirror. One hand splayed across a still flat stomach, the other brandishing a pregnancy test that glowed unmistakably positive. Her caption read, "Life plot twist. At Miles Bewit. Ready to build a tiny bridge?" She'd linked a poll beneath, boy or girl, and followers were voting in the thousands. Miles's blood turned to sleet. He managed to reply to Elise, blindsided. "Figuring it out. We'll explain," but the screen showed she had already seen the post, her read receipt, haunting him. Back in Austin, Lorraine greeted him with confetti and a chilled bottle of discount champagne. Darcy live-streamed from the sofa, chirping, "Congrats, Daddy-to-be," before Miles lunged to swat the phone's camera off. Lorraine, flushed with triumph, declared that the Whitaker line would finally gain its rightful grandson. Darcy teased a hashtag, Hashtag ring by spring, and the room spun with a carnival of noise Miles could hardly absorb. He roared for silence, voice echoing off drywall, and stormed out before Lorraine's outrage could ignite. He found Kendra at their usual coffee shop, photographing latte art beneath a halo ring light she carried in her tote. Sunglasses hid her eyes, but not the sly tilt of her smile. When he asked if the story was real, she shrugged, slid the pregnancy stick across the table like a brand deal sample, and said 3 separate tests had shown identical blue lines. She spoke of co-parenting vibes, of documentaries that needed authentic narratives, of brand partnerships already emailing. Miles demanded a paternity test. She agreed with a flippant nod. Content either way, she said. Audiences love vulnerability. His phone kept buzzing. Lorraine, Jonah. An unknown number that felt strangely ominous. He wanted to crawl out of his own skin. 2 mornings later, the lobby of Delta Bridge was gridlocked by an unexpected guest, Vivian Cordell, all crimson suit and diamond fury, striding past reception with a folder thick as a legal brief. She demanded the whereabouts of Kendra Vega loud enough for the whole floor to hear. When Kendra appeared, lip gloss perfect, confidence barely nicked, Vivian fanned out ultrasound images and printed messages, payments Kendra had solicited from Franklin Cordell in exchange for silence. Dates overlapped precisely with Kendra's Austin nights. Gasps broke around the cubicles, phones lifted to record. Vivian delivered her lines like a final verdict. Houston police were reopening a fraud investigation. Any mention of the Cordell name online would be met with lawsuits measured in 7 figures. As security escorted Kendra to clean out her desk, Miles stood paralyzed in the hallway, a bystander to the collapse he had helped engineer. That evening, the burning pain he'd tried to ignore for a week flared into agony. Under urgent care fluorescence, he confessed each reckless encounter to a nurse practitioner who kept her judgment hidden behind professional nods. Lab results returned quick and damning. Gonorrhea. Treatable but contagious. He left with antibiotics and a printed sheet headed "Notify all partners immediately." In the dim cab of his truck, he dialed Elise. She answered on the 6th ring. He told her everything, voice raw, throat thick, pregnancy scam, public humiliation, the infection he now carried. She listened without interruption, then thanked him for the honesty. Said that she and Ivy were safe, and wished him healing. He sobbed until his forehead thumped the steering wheel, wipers hazy over a windshield that didn't need them. Home was no refuge. Lorraine had transformed the guest room into a pastel nursery mock-up, complete with iron crib, mobiles, and a stack of monogrammed onesies that still bore price tags. Darcy unpacked ring lights and pastel balloons for a gender reveal teaser. Miles, hoarse from the clinic and the drive, announced that the pregnancy was a con and that the house needed to empty of illusions. Darcy's TikTok feed froze midstream, Lorraine's jaw cracked open, disbelief morphing into indignation and finally self-pity. He informed them both that they had a month to relocate. Darcy cursed, Lorraine declared filial betrayal, but he stood firm, repeating boundaries until the words tasted like iron. Over the next 48 hours, he sanitized chrome faucets, stripped guest sheets that smelled of perfume not belonging to Elise, and donated every baby item to a women's shelter. He changed the Wi-Fi password, cleared his social apps, and pinned Ivy's rainbow drawing above his desk beside a printed list of Garrett's conditions. Show up early. Show up sober. Show up alone. In a quiet dawn, he drafted a letter, handwritten, shaky pen, and mailed it to San Marcos, no return address needed for Elise to know. Days melded into a monastic rhythm. Dawn coffee, worksite checks, therapy at noon, AA at dusk, antibiotics at breakfast and dinner. Each FaceTime with Ivy felt like a tiny sunlight window. She showed him Tangerine's painted smile, the seedlings sprouting in the raised bed, the fox plush now wearing a makeshift superhero cape. Elise rarely entered the frame, but when she did, her eyes scanned his the way a doctor checks a pulse, and he was grateful for every second of scrutiny. One late afternoon, as sun poured apricot light across the living room floorboards, He swept the last of Lorraine's confetti into a dustpan and realized the house no longer smelled like drama, but like lemon cleanser and cedar planks. The silence wasn't empty. It was space. Space for accountability, for Ivy's laughter when it was ready to return, for Elise's cautious footsteps should she ever choose to cross the threshold again. He poured himself a glass of sparkling water, toasted the quiet, and swallowed the fizz like penance. The phone vibrated once. Garrett's number. He answered, heart steady. "Park at 10 Sunday," Garrett said. "Same rules." Miles exhaled. "I'll be early," he promised, and this time the words felt less like a plea and more like a blueprint already half-built. His own hands finally learning where the reinforcement belonged. Weeks slipped forward in small, deliberate steps, the way a cautious hiker tests each stone across a stream. Every dawn, Miles rose before the sun, laced worn running shoes, and traced the quiet streets of Hyde Park until the sky blushed pink. The first mile burned his lungs. By the third, his thoughts thinned into rhythm. Left, right, breathe, leaving no room for shame or worry. He logged the runs in a notebook he kept by the coffee maker alongside the AA chips that multiplied like smooth river rocks. 24 hours, 1 week. 30 days, 45. Lorraine lasted exactly 19 of those mornings before packing her Buick and vowing to stay with a cousin who actually appreciates family. Darcy followed 2 days later, suitcase in one hand, ring light in the other, promising her followers a new apartment tour coming soon. Their absence left echoes. But the house felt taller without their complaints wedged in the corners. Miles filled the silence with gentle things, lo-fi jazz, the hiss of sourdough starter he learned to keep alive, the scrape of a paintbrush as he resurfaced Ivy's old toy chest for whenever she chose to bring toys back. On Sundays he showed up at Rio Vista Park 15 minutes early. Sunflower seeds in one pocket, dog-eared notebook in the other. Ivy sprinted to him every time, the fox plush now sporting a homemade Super Fox mask stitched by Elise. They read picture books on a quilt under the sycamore while Garrett timed the visits with quiet diligence. Elise approached at the edges, sometimes sitting, sometimes standing apart. But each week her posture unwound a single strand. She noticed, he thought, the way his hands no longer shook, the way he never smelled of rye or IPA, the way he never reached for his buzzing phone because now it never buzzed. One afternoon in early spring, when bluebonnets soaked the hill beside them, Ivy tugged Miles's sleeve and whispered that she wanted Daddy to meet Tangerine in person. Elise hesitated, then nodded. They caravanned to the Rowan bungalow. Marlene served iced tea on the porch and Miles thanked her without stumbling over guilt. Inside, Ivy retrieved the pebble from a mason jar thrown and introduced it with solemn formality. Miles bowed to the glossy rock, earning a squeal. While Ivy trotted off to show Grandma her newest watercolor, Miles and Elise stood in the doorway of the spare room. The one Garrett had turned into a tiny studio for their daughter. Paint pots lined the sill. Unfinished canvases leaned like bright secrets against the wall. Elise said Ivy had been invited to display a few pieces in the community center's children's art night next month. Miles listened as though the invitation were a Pulitzer. He asked if he could help frame her work. Elise pursed her lips, then offered a cautious yes. 2 weeks later, he arrived with maple frames he'd crafted in the garage, corners mitered smooth. Elise inspected the joints, running a fingertip along the clean seam, and muttered, "Sturdy." It was the first borderline compliment he had earned from her since the night she left. News of Kendra's arrest broke the same day. Vivian Cordell's legal team released a statement. Local outlets replayed footage of Kendra in handcuffs, oversized sunglasses failing to hide tear-tracked mascara. Miles watched a single report, heart pulsing equal parts pity and distance, then shut the laptop and returned to sanding the last frame. By late April, mediation papers arrived. Elise had filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences and requesting primary custody with structured visitation. Reading the petition curled something inside Miles, but he felt no urge to contest. He asked his lawyer to agree to every line except one. He wanted Ivy on alternating Sunday mornings and one evening midweek, so he could keep reading her stories. Elise, through counsel, allowed Wednesday dinners at a neutral public place, a family cafe near the river that served mac and cheese in ceramic skillets. The day of the hearing, Miles wore the only suit that still fit after months of dawn running. He stood when addressed, answered questions directly. Never once glanced at the gallery where Lorraine sat stiff in pearl earrings she'd retrieved from exile. Elise spoke softly, voice steady, recounting the night of the swab, the weeks of online chaos. The calm that followed once distance replaced drama. The judge approved the settlement in under 20 minutes. When the gavel fell, Elise's shoulders sank as though the weight she'd carried had been external all along. Outside the courthouse, Garrett offered a handshake. Miles accepted it with both hands. Elise and Miles shared a look, not warm but finally threadbare, of hostility. Ivy, coloring in a corner with court-provided crayons, looked up only to ask if they could still feed ducks next Sunday. Both parents answered yes at the same time. Early May delivered the children's art showcase. The community center smelled of lemonade, finger paint, and the metallic tang of folding chairs. Miles arrived first, frames tucked under one arm like trophies, and volunteered to hammer the hanging hooks. Elise guided Ivy through last-minute touch-ups, a dab of white highlight on a fox's eye, a thin brushstroke turning a plain pebble into a galaxy rock. When guests trickled in, Ivy grabbed both her parents' hands, one on each side, and dragged them to her display. Miles watched Elise lean close to read Ivy's handwritten title cards, watched Elise's lips curve into a real smile at Superfox Saves the Bridge. He felt the warm click of something fragile slotting, if not back into place, then into some new shape that could still bear weight. Near the end of the evening, the center's coordinator announced each child's name over a crackling microphone. Ivy's cheeks bloomed red as she stepped onto the little riser to accept a paper ribbon for Most Imaginative Narrative. She thanked Superfox first, then Mommy for buying paint, then Grandpa for building an easel, and finally Daddy for helping me make my picture stand up straight. The crowd chuckled. Miles blinked fast, clapping until his palms stung. On the sidewalk afterward, daylight sliding into peach dusk, Elise wrapped Ivy in a cardigan and strapped her into the booster seat. She turned to Miles, holding Superfox in one hand like a peace flag. There was caution in her eyes, but there was also a softness he hadn't seen since the early years. She said Ivy had been asking whether Daddy could join their Saturday farmers market trips sometimes. The request hovered between them. Miles swallowed, aware of every heartbeat. Elise didn't rescind the offer. He promised to text his Wednesday cafe order earlier, so Ivy's grilled cheese would arrive exactly when hers did. Elise half smiled at that. As the sedan pulled away, Ivy pressed Superfox to the window and waved. Miles steadied a hand in midair until the taillights blended with evening traffic. Back home, he pinned the paper ribbon beside his sobriety chips. Crimson next to blue, imagination beside endurance. He brewed mint tea, opened his notebook, and logged a final evening run. 3 slow miles through streets buzzing with cicadas and promise. Inside the margin he wrote one small sentence: bridges can be rebuilt if the pilings sink deep enough. Then he closed the notebook, set his alarm for dawn, and let the quiet of the house settle like fresh paint, not a reminder of what was missing, but a primer for whatever beams might rise next. June rolled into Austin on a heat wave, asphalt shimmering like poured mercury, and the farmer's market buzzed even at 8 a.m. Miles arrived early, habit now, canvas tote slung over his shoulder. He texted Elise's location by the snow cone truck and rehearsed small talk. The new Montessori splash pad, Garrett's tomato vines, Ivy's upcoming kindergarten placement. He no longer drafted apologies on the walkover. He drafted possibilities. Elise and Ivy appeared between booths of peaches and zinnias. Ivy broke into a sprint, cape of market flyers fluttering behind her. Miles swung her up, nose full of sunscreen and lemonade. Elise caught up, breath a little short, but she smiled without tension. They strolled the rows 3 abreast, toddler style, Ivy in the middle gripping both parents' hands. At the honey stand, Ivy talked the beekeeper into a tasting spoon. She insisted on buying a tiny jar for Daddy's toast. Miles paid but made her accept 2 shiny quarters from his pocket. Ritual Garrett had coached him on. Let the child give. 2. Elise watched the exchange, approval tucked behind her sunglasses. Mid-loop they reached the craft coffee booth. The barista recognized Miles from Sunday visits and said a court-adieu on the counter unprompted. Elise raised an eyebrow, playful, not accusing. Regular? Routine, he said. Keeps me between the guardrails. Ivy pointed at a display of potted herbs. Can we grow mint for Mom's tea? Miles crouched, meeting her gaze. Let's pick the healthiest plant. We'll co-parent it. My porch Monday to Wednesday, yours the rest. Elise laughed, genuine. They chose a pot, roots bound tight with promise. For the first time since sobriety began, Miles feared the room more than the drinks. He called Elise while knotting his tie. Tonight's a milestone and a minefield. You have your guardrails? She reminded. Text if you wobble. The hall swelled with tuxedos and selfie flashes. Waiters floated champagne towers. Jonah slapped his back, thrust a flute into Miles's hand. Miles thanked him, set it on a passing tray, fetched sparkling water instead. He stayed near colleagues who knew the story, the honest one, not the gossip blog version, and when Delta Bridge announced the Innovation Award, Miles's name rang out clean. He stepped to the podium, acceptance speech folded in his breast pocket but unnecessary. He spoke off-script about second chances, about designing structures that flex instead of fracture, about how the strongest beams were once molten and unformed. Applause surged, not rowdy, but warm. In the wings, Jonah whispered, "Proud of you, man." The compliment felt lighter than any buzz alcohol had ever given. Outside, Miles texted Elise a single photo, crystal trophy held beside a water bottle. Still between the guardrails. A confetti burst emoji came back, followed by, Ivy's asleep, but she'll want the story tomorrow. At Riverstone Cafe the following week, Ivy slid into her usual booth seat. Booster now unnecessary, she'd grown an inch since April. Miles ordered the grilled cheese ahead. It arrived with steam curls just as Ivy unfolded her napkin. Elise sat across, no longer hovering near the door like a chaperone. They reviewed Ivy's kindergarten orientation packet together. Spirit Day colors, peanut allergy rules, the sign-in app. Miles offered to build a cubby shelf for Ivy's backpack in Elise's mudroom. Elise accepted, penciling the weekend on her calendar. Mid-meal, a commotion erupted near the entrance. Paparazzi flash. Raised voices. Kendra Vega swept in, free on bail and armed with a photographer. She wore remorse like a designer coat, expensive but detachable, calling out to diners about a redemption podcast. Their eyes met across the dining room. Miles's pulse thundered. He reached for his water, kept his gaze on Ivy. Kendra strutted closer, cameraman trailing, until Elise rose, calm as coastal fog, and positioned herself between tables. Involving a family restaurant crosses a line, Elise told Kendra, voice low but edged with steel. Kendra faltered, calculating optics. Miles stayed seated, letting Elise's boundary hold. The manager arrived. Kendra pivoted into an apology segment for her feed, but was escorted out before the camera could spin her narrative. The cafe normalized, forks clinking again. Ivy studied the grown-ups. Was that a bad guy? Miles answered carefully. Someone making poor choices. Mom protected our dinner. Heroes do that. Elise sat, smoothing Ivy's braid. She glanced at Miles. Faint tremor gone from her hands. You kept your seat, she murmured. That matters. Saturday, he carried lumber into Elise's garage, measuring for the cubby shelf. Ivy played foreman, checking angles with a toy level. Elise brewed coffee, handed Miles a mug, and lingered as the saw dusted cedar onto the floor. I watched the award speech online, she said. Flex instead of fracture, it landed. Miles hesitated, then met her eyes. It was about Bridges, but also us. She nodded, fingertip tracing the grain of a half-cut board. I know. By dusk, the cubby stood in the mudroom. 3 compartments, rounded edges, hooks low enough for Ivy to reach. Ivy decorated name labels. MOM, Dad, IVY. Elise didn't correct her. Miles swallowed the lump that rose. Garrett inspected the shelf, slapped Miles' shoulder. Level, he approved. Marlene served berry cobbler. They ate on the porch beneath string lights. Conversation easy as the breeze. When Miles prepared to leave, Ivy asked if the mint plant could stay another night. Its leaves were having a sleepover with Grandma's rosemary. Miles smiled. Plants need friends, too. Elise walked him to the driveway. Cicadas hummed. Sky glowed cobalt. She spoke first. We're good co-architects when we keep blueprints clear. He answered. I don't want to design promises I can't build. A quiet space opened. She slipped Superfox into his hand. On the cape, Ivy had scrawled Go Daddy in purple marker. Take him for the week, Elise said. Mascot for your guardrails. Miles pressed the plush to his chest like a relay baton. I'll return him Friday with progress notes. Elise's laugh was soft, surprised. In the porch light, her expression carried neither certainty nor rejection, just possibility, an unfinished span across water, supported by pilings finally sunk deep. As Miles drove away, Superfox propped upright in the passenger seat, he realized the road ahead no longer terrified him. It challenged him, an engineer's favorite verb. And somewhere beneath the hum of tires on asphalt, he heard the echo of Ivy's ribbon words, helping me make my pictures stand up straight. Bridges, drawings, families, everything worth keeping upright started with a steady hand and an honest line. August crept in with cicadas, sawing the dawn, and yellow buses, rehearsing their routes. 1 year had passed since Elise steered the RAV4 south on I-35, and this morning Ivy Whitaker, now 5.5 and missing her first baby tooth, woke buzzing for her very first day of kindergarten. Miles had run his usual 3 miles at sunrise, palms closing around a brand new 365-day sobriety chip the moment the Rooster Coffee neon flickered on. He showered, combed his beard, and pinned the chip inside his blazer pocket, close enough to touch when nerves crackled. On the passenger seat, Superfox sat buckled in, cape freshly laundered, ready for duty. At 7:30, he parked outside the Rowan house. Ivy burst through the screen door wearing a backpack that seemed to swallow half her torso, cardboard camera made from a shoebox bouncing on its yarn strap. Elise followed, holding 2 travel mugs and a small mason jar. The co-parented mint plant, leaves now glossy and tall. Breakfast mint for luck, she said, handing 1 mug to Miles. Their fingers brushed without flinch. Garrett appeared long enough to snap a photo, parents kneeling on either side of Ivy. Superfox posed like class mascot. You'll want this in 15 years. He joked, then shooed them toward the car. Riverbend Elementary hummed with first-day electricity, teachers in spirit shirts, parents clutching enrollment packets like passports. Miles carried Ivy's backpack while she clutched the mint jar. Elise balanced a box of disinfectant wipes and crayons requested by the supply list. Inside the classroom, cubbies lined one wall. Ivy located her name, IVR, in block letters and slid the mint jar onto the shelf next to a laminated photo of Superfox. She kissed the plush on the snout. Guard the plant. Don't let it get lonely. Miss Patterson gathered the kids on a rainbow rug. When Ivy joined the circle, she gave a double thumbs up to her parents across the room, signal they could leave without tears. Miles felt a tug deep in his chest, pride spliced with the ache of letting go an inch farther. Elise looped her arm through his, the first spontaneous touch in longer than he could measure, and guided him to the hallway before emotion leaked. They walked toward the exit in companionable hush, sneakers squeaking on waxed linoleum. I booked a half-day, Elise said. Want to grab brunch? No paparazzi. I checked the cafe. He smiled. I'd like that. Outside, sunlight bounced off the flagpole. Miles paused, reaching into his blazer. Something for you or for us? He placed the 1-year chip in Elise's palm. I know an emblem can't rewrite the past, but it marks where the bridge started holding. Her fingers closed around the coin. Her eyes shimmered but didn't spill. I'm proud of you, Miles. Ivy will be, too, when she's old enough to understand what it means to choose steady every day. She returned the chip, pressing it against his chest exactly above his heart. At Cedar and Steam Cafe, they took a corner booth, no longer needing exits in sight. Miles ordered sparkling water. Elise, the lavender latte she used to crave. Conversation floated, from Ivy's eagerness to learn phonics to Garrett's plan to install rain barrels, to Miles's latest project, a pedestrian bridge spanning Shoal Creek, intentionally low enough for kids to toss pebbles and count the ripples. The city wants a community ribbon cutting next spring, he said. They asked if I knew any child artist who could design the plaque. Elise's eyebrow arched. Ivy would faint from excitement. Then it set. He hesitated, then continued. I'd like the plaque to read Rowan, Whitaker Footbridge. Both names. Both families. Elise traced the lip of her mug, considering. That feels right. Brunch lasted 2 easy hours. When they parted in the lot, Elise surprised him again, stepped forward and kissed his cheek, quick but deliberate. For the record, she whispered, a bridge that flexes can sometimes bend back toward where it began. She didn't promise more. She didn't need to. Their midweek dinner tradition shifted to Elise's kitchen, so Ivy could chef. Wearing a paisley apron, she sprinkled basil from the once tiny mint pot, now an herb tower, onto flatbread pizzas. Super Fox served as sous chef. Miles grated cheese while Ivy recounted recess adventures. She taught 3 classmates to draw fox tails on stick figures. When dishes were done, Ivy dragged her easel to the living room. Dad, help me spell Shoal Creek. I need it on my bridge picture. Miles knelt, guiding her crayon letters. Elise watched from the doorway, arms folded, soft smile surrendered freely. Bedtime neared. Ivy hugged Miles goodnight, then zipped upstairs. Elise walked him to the porch. Humid air carried a whiff of blooming crepe myrtle. I'm visiting the bridge site Saturday to survey handrail height,
he said.
Want to bring Ivy? She could pick pebble toss angles for design, authenticity. Elise laughed. Only if you bring hard hats in child size. Already ordered.
Pink.
A cricket orchestra filled the pause that followed. Finally, Elise asked, how would you feel about coffee afterward? Just the 2 of us? Miles's smile answered before his words. I'd feel hopeful. Months swirled forward. Parent-teacher conferences, Halloween Fox costume 2.0, Thanksgiving pies that Miles learned not to burn. Winter rainfall delayed construction twice. But by March, the Shoal Creek span stretched from limestone bank to bank. Maple-planked deck, side rails low enough for a child's sightline yet safe enough for a toddler's wobble. At sunrise on dedication day, Miles jogged the trail alone, stopping mid-span to inhale the creek's cool rush. He pressed 2 fingertips to the railing, a silent oath. At 10 a.m., a small crowd gathered, city officials, neighbors, press, and front-and-center Ivy in a hard hat festooned with glitter stickers. Her artwork, a bright fox guiding children over a stylized bridge, gleamed on a bronze plaque now bolted to the entrance post, designed by Ivy Rowan Whitaker, age 6. Beneath it, smaller script read Structural Engineer, Miles B. Whitaker. Project Liaison, Elise Rowan. The mayor handed Ivy oversized scissors. Cameras clicked as she sliced the red ribbon clean. Cheers cascaded across the creek channel. Ivy spun, beaming. Daddy, we opened your bridge. Our bridge, he corrected, lifting her onto the rail for a better view. She flung both arms wide. Cape caught in the breeze. Elise stepped beside them, one hand resting lightly on the small of Miles's back, the gesture instinctive now, not negotiated. Sunlight glinted off the water, dappling all 3 of them in shifting gold. From upstream, a boy tossed the first pebble. It plinked, ripples racing under the planks. Ivy giggled, fetched her own rock, tangerine upgraded with fresh galaxy paint, and sent it after. Miles and Elise exchanged a glance that held gratitude, a trace of the grief that shaped it, and something else that felt very much like a future. Across the new span, families began to wander, footsteps drumming a rhythm that was solid, yet softly resonant. Proof the structure flexed. Breathed, lived. Miles closed his eyes for a heartbeat, listening. When he opened them, Elise's hand was still there, Ivy's laughter still shimmered in the air, and the span beneath them held steady. Exactly as designed. And that brings us to the end of today's story on Truistory Vibes. Don't forget to leave a comment with a quote or moment that touched you the most. Your words give our team the motivation to keep creating more heartfelt stories. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you again soon.